Welcome everyone to the final presentation for this Dreamweaving the Orville Crown exercise. We will start with a moment of silence. So to tune in to our journey that we have been on for the past 3 months, we will start with a short teaser video which shows you just some images of all the work that has happened over the past 3 months.
Hello? It's on? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, that was it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a nice presentation. So Omar and I have just wanted to quickly gate crash, if you like, the beginning of the presentation, because this is actually the first opportunity that we've had where the whole community could be invited, because we had the COVID guidelines over the last, well, let's say the 2 months that we were doing the Dreamweaving. And the last time that we did have the large community gathering, it was in the Unity Pavilion. And that was where we presented the idea of doing this Dreamweaving with the collaboration, with the help from the Citizens Assembly team. And we asked for that show of hands, and we got an overwhelming response. And so we just wanted to thank everybody for that support at the very beginning to get us on this new track. And at that time, that was kind of like planting a seed. And that seed has basically grown over the last 2 or 3 months into a very, I like to think, happy tree. So many people have been involved in the last 3 months to actually make this experience a reality. And part of that is also what you see out there in the exhibition is kind of like the tip of the iceberg. What the architects have done there is an amazing piece of work, and yet it's really, there's a lot of work that's gone on below the surface. So it's the opportunity today to sort of dig down into that and see and get experience of everybody else who's actually been able to help to put this together. And to that end, I would actually, as part of our awareness and our thank you to all the people, it's not just people who've helped with the architects we're helping. We had graphic designers, the filmmakers. We've had so many Aurovilians, almost 40 Aurovilians giving donations, and from outside as well, from the AVI centers. So I would actually invite anybody who's either donated money, helped, presented in any way, shape, or form, just to give a sense, if they could stand up just for a few seconds to give us an idea. I'd just like to show, because I think it's really important that we do this. I think that that we see how much community support there has been for this on many, many, many different levels. Okay, thank you.
Funny, when David said all of those who have participated in the process stand up, the architects did not stand up. Okay, hello everyone. So my part here is to share a very small note on intentions, why we are here today. As we said in the opening at the Unity Pavilion, we said we as members of the Auroville Resident Assembly, we are doing this work, and we will come as transparent as possible and share what we can share. And this is for us, this moment of sharing. We want to share the whole process. We want to see how holistic it is. And we want to communicate ideas either to Aurovillians or to those who are in working groups or those who are in decision-making positions. And it's our chance to communicate few thoughts and to answer questions. The whole process, I was receiving people who have been giving enormous support and asking for clarity. Many questions came. Why this, for example, why this didn't lead to one single project? And we actually always wanted to clarify the aim was pool of ideas. So today is our time to bring clarity, and we will try to do this through the process, through the whole today's program. And then we will try to close with a candid statement in which we come very clear what we managed to do and what we also feel we didn't manage to do. And we end with an open Q&A. We will remain trying to answer all questions until it's all done. So thank you, and hope you enjoy today. Yeah.
So as David and Omar said, today is about kind of celebrating all the work that was done and really sharing also the kind of evaluation of the process and what we hope will also kind of be an evolving model of an exercise that we can work on in Auroville on many different levels. So I'll just quickly, my name is Aditi, I'm from the Citizens Assembly team, and I'll be taking you through today's program. We have quite a big agenda. We will go into the process after this, into why collaborative planning, why dreamweaving. Then we will get some glimpses through videos of all the dreamweaving presentations that were made. And I think there will be views of the design as well. Then we will take a short break. I emphasize that this is a very short break because we have a tight schedule. Then we will see another video on the reflections about the process from everyone, all the different groups that participated, from experts, from focus group members, randomly selected participants from the architects and VSF as well. Then we will get into the evaluation of the process. We've had a lot of input and feedback come back to the process through various surveys that were circulated. And then we will close with final reflections on the whole Dreamweaving experience, on the whole exercise, and then there will be a closing Q&A at the end. So without further delay, I will hand over now to some of our team members who will take us through the process and the collaborative planning aspects.
Okay, I need the diagram. Yes. So the start of today, we have decided to start from asking very simple question, which is even before the Dreamweaving, which David and Mona will talk about. The simple question, why collaborative participatory planning? And because it's a very, very simple question, why planners do not go sit in their own studios, finish it without any communication with people? Why it is of highest importance to work collaboratively, and why it is today, as part of the standards of today planning, it is almost frowned upon if there is no participatory planning as integral to the planning process. And I believe the reason is very simple. You can, through a top-down approach, create a vision, create enormous quality, but then to develop the vision is a different process. The creation of a vision is one process, and the development and evolution of the vision is another process. And comes the question of livability. How to create a place that it is livable without some kind of multidisciplinary participation in which it deals with the multi-layers of the issues at hand in planning, deals with the complexity of planning. How to create a livable space without consulting the people who are living in that space. So it comes across as it is not only, it ended up in planning that it is not only seen as a necessity, it is seen by some planners as a right, and it is seen by others as duty. And I believe in this. Imagine two people, one has an apartment, another one has an apartment. One receive the apartment, use it as it is. Another one change and create it with the character that suits his life, her life. Who do you think will be more productive? Who do you think will be more in tune with the space? Who do you think will be more at ease in the space? So imagine a community that participate in the creation of the physical environment in which they live. And imagine the economy, imagine the social interaction. And do you think this will be equal to a place in which there is no participation? Participatory processes bring the aspect of livability. Participatory processes bring the multidisciplinary expertise that it is much needed to deal with the complexity of planning. And this is why we are pushing, and this is one of the thoughts we want to communicate today, why we are pushing, why we are saying planning cannot be done today without participatory processes that includes the multidisciplinary experts as well as members of a society living in a space. And here comes this diagram, and this was the effort we were trying to push for. We looked at the different actors. There are the designers, there are the center, randomly selected citizens, there are peers and experts and focus group representing different positions in Oroville. But also there are those experts who have been working on the multidisciplinary complex researches much needed in planning. And the aim of this was to get a voice to everyone. And this is something that is missing. Some people think that this process is about these circles. But in fact, the process is about the arrows between the circles. because a planning, a multidisciplinary participatory process in planning is a process that revolves around feedback. So some of you would think that the whole process is about the designs outside. The designs outside are integral and very important component, but in the report, as you will see when the report is represented, at the center is also the feedback. And what we are trying to communicate to those who will work on the DDP is the feedback. So it's a process to bring voices, the multicolored, the diverse voices to those who are working on the design process. Yeah?
Yeah. So I'll just flesh this out a little bit. Sorry for the notes, but since quite some months I seem to have COVID brain. But anyway. So the important thing about this, the shift that we made from our original Dreamweaving sessions, actually over the years, but mostly sort of around 2007, 2008, that's when it was started, we're really just focused on the architects. So the architects, the Dreamweaving evolved to find ways that architects could design together. But in order to do that, you needed to be able to design. So it wasn't a process which could include the general population. That was what we had Dreamcatching for before that. But also it wasn't at that time easy to integrate the technical and the planning aspects. So this has really been a sort of evolutionary step that we've experienced now in the last few months with these processes. So with this diagram, as Omar was explaining, so we already included the planning and the analytical work here, and the peer and experts and the focus group. So this is also trying to balance out any areas within Oroville where there are relatively extreme views or extreme positions, to bring those people to the table and have voices heard. All the way through this process, it was always about getting everybody to the table. At no point did we try and exclude anyone. On the contrary, it was all by invitation. And there where Citizens Assembly also brought in an extra element was this randomly selected citizens in the white circle. Because there's a kind of a collective wisdom in the community. And since we've already covered within the focus group people with very strong opinions, the idea was to try with this, which we've already explored through Citizens Assembly last year on the water vision, was to actually try and find ways to integrate people, and in this case through random selection, who wouldn't normally come to sessions like this. And so anyway, when Kathy speaks a little bit about Citizens Assembly, she'll go a little bit more in detail on that one. And ultimately, the more we move in the direction of this kind of an approach, it's about building trust and building a sense of community, because the more people that take part in these processes, we had the feedback that they feel more integrated and they feel more part of decision making. So we already got a lot of positive feedback in that direction. So now I'll invite Mona up and we'll start Dreamweaving. You can switch that one off now, Sophie. See that? So just to focus in the Dreamweaving part of that, as I said, we'd done the Dreamcatching for a few years, actually, from 2005, 2007, and then because we were trying to produce something, a lot of people sort of complaining that we were sitting around in circles talking all the time. So we sort of kick-started processes where we could develop the planning. And that's where I think many of you might have seen the Crownways proposal from 2008. And the whole purpose of Dreamweaving was really to find ways to bring the galaxy model to life. That was the focus. That whenever we had dream catching sessions, it was always an image of the galaxy model in the center. And it was really exploring ways to find parameters, find themes, find ways in which the architects could work together and sort of plug in to something vaster. And of course, when we talk about the dream, and we talk about Mother's dream, it's not about each one of our individual dreams. So, as I said, this focus on professionals, so it's been really interesting to widen that and to find ways to integrate these other voices. So, we've just started something very interesting in this regard. But the key element of Dreamweaving, for those who haven't heard the descriptions before, the idea is really when you're doing the dream weaving, the architects or whoever else is working on it are exploring ideas, they're sharing ideas, and then they're copying ideas, they're borrowing ideas from each other. And they're also the space for a direct critique if there's something that doesn't really work, but it's not a question of going into questions around design. I don't like this, I don't like that. So it's a facilitated process. And the essence of it is, I don't know from a mathematical point of view how many of you know the terms highest common factor and lowest common denominator. But we kind of use this a lot to describe it because it's about finding a higher synthesis with the highest common factor rather than simply boiling down solutions into the 2 or 3 things that everybody can agree on, which I think in a lot of collective processes, a lot of people complain that it's sort of democratic in the sense it's just what the majority want or it's just what everybody can agree on. Well, this is actually trying to sort of transcend that in some way and find many, many different things upon which people can agree. And now I'll just pass it over to Mona.
Yeah. So I jumped into this process when David and Omar were kind of figuring out who wants to play what role. They were approaching all the architects. And for me, dream catching and dream weaving, which we started in 2005, had been a very healing process because I do feel that in Auroville, we tend to hurt each other often, and then we keep that hurt for many, many years. Even we have moved on, and it stays. And this whole dream catching, dream weaving exercise for me way back in 2005 had been a very healing process. So when I saw that our community was kind of fragmenting through all the different events that have taken place in the last few months, I didn't feel that I could take, one side or the other. But when dream weaving came up as a possibility, I grabbed it. And so we started, with David and I, we started kind of brainstorming how we can do this because we hadn't done it ever at this level. We've done several, personal examples. 2005, we started. 2007, we did an academic exercise, which was a studio on Integral Healing Center. And there we had started doing dream weaving, which was kind of, sitting on tables and exchanging ideas. And then 2008 was Crown Race, and we had 2015, we had the Sustainable Livelihood Institute, where 3 of us, Fabian, Manu, and I, with David, we kind of tried to create a master plan with Joss. And then there was the Garden of the Unexpected, where we also tried to, weave in the 3 designs. So we had some muscle power behind us, but not exactly ready for such a big scale. And the idea to do, with what the Citizens Assembly had done with water, which I was not so aware of at that time, but this team is just amazing. I mean, this is my first, time with them, which I've spent and got to know them. And they had done already this amazing thing with water, but they hadn't done this thing where you can weave ideas together. You can call experts and focus groups and people, but then as an architect, as a planner, we need to kind of weave ideas. So that's when the idea came that we'll do this, we'll have tables, and then people go from table to table. You have one person anchoring each table, in this case, one architect or one team of architects, and then they would have all the feedback from different people. And the main thing that we encourage people is, this is not a normal, criticism, because as architects, we're very used to critiquing. That's what we are taught, We can break apart designs, because that's how we are taught to sharpen our skills. But that's not what we want to do here. We want to transcend that. We want to bring the best of people together. So when we started this process, the idea was, you can critique, but only what you can take with you. So you don't just do critique for the sake of criticizing. If you really don't agree, you can say something. But the best thing is you take what you can. You say, oh, I like this idea and this and this. I'll try to weave it into my idea. That is what dream weaving is about. And when this happens with 2, 3 times with different people, it just creates such a weave, like everybody's ideas the best ideas get woven. And this is what we had so much faith and We thought that it will bring a diversity, a strength, and we think we did. We succeeded in that. So, but it's been an amazing experience to do this, at this scale with an organization behind us like the Citizens Assembly team. So that's where we started this process of dream weaving. Normally we would do dream catching, like David said, and then dream weaving, but we had no time. So also time was of immense importance, and I think everybody who participated in this process has understood that this has been an extremely difficult and time-consuming, at the same time satisfying, but it has been a very tiring process for some people, So next time we can do perhaps a little bit better, but let's see. We'll get new tools then. So that's Dreamweaving. And now we hand over to Kathy to speak a little bit about the Citizens Assembly.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Just a few brief words building on what both Mona and David have said. The Citizens Assembly team, which I guess most of you are aware by now, that we started working already maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago on this idea of Citizens Assembly for Oroville, because like Dreamweaving, it's also a participatory, collaborative process. And one of the pillars is this aspect of random selection of participants, which is really about bringing in this diversity of perspectives and voices. And so we had the experience doing the water CA, and as out of that came this invitation to participate in helping the Dreamweaving. And I think it was really a complementary coming together of really aligned values, because the way that the Citizens Assembly works is really on the basis of really non-attachment to outcomes. It was really this idea that if we, really invite potentially anybody in the community through random selection to have a seat at the table if they go through a learning process, as they did both in the Water CA and also through the Dreamweaving process, that it can really yield some rich quality outputs. So that was how Citizens Assembly team were invited in, and really we just worked closely together because it was obvious that for the Dreamweaving aspect to be sustained, it was really going to need the support of a number of different teams. So the Citizens Assembly team actually, because of our experience with the Water Citizens Assembly, we had an understanding of what it would require in terms of facilitation needs, logistics support, feeding people, venues, all of that sort of side, and then coordination with the many other teams that were behind the scene, whether it was communications for announcements, media aspects and filming, budgets. So, and there were, let me just see, there was, and research and reporting as well. So all of these elements together kind of meant that there was a strong holding group that could support the actual Dreamweaving to focus on their task. And the piece about which you saw in the diagram that Omar put up, which had the random selection of that little circle, this part we also took care of, and really just making sure there was a sort of non-aligned to any specific topic or focus or having any particular perspective. So it was really bringing in that voice of the community through the random selection aspect of having a small group of randomly selected participants as part of the Dreamweaving. So that's what we did. That's how we supported the process. And I think together it was really a very fruitful, rich learning experience for us to also collaborate on this journey, because it was just so, I think the value connect was just so aligned that it really made sense to join forces, and it gave us a chance as a team to really learn more about how to facilitate and work on these participatory processes. So that's what we did. I think I'm handing back to Omar by the looks of things.
So I need the brief. Yeah. So, hello again. So I have a very small advice to anybody who would come and talk on the speech. Don't. The light comes from everywhere, and there's a blind spot here in which you completely don't see anything. So just give me the brief. So, okay. So many have asked about what is the brief was about. And considering that I have been one of those, the major one participating in writing the brief, I have to explain before the architect's presentation comes in the video. So let's say, what is the core of the brief? The core of the brief, as I have explained in few public lectures, there are three elements. There is an element to start from, and there is an element that you try to go to while respecting the third one. So the moment to start from, we are dealing with the master plan. But we do not see the master plan as an end point, because professionally, a master plan is by definition a document that it is created to be modified. And then, but where do you want to go? You want to go to the vision. The vision is there since the end of the 60s. And this is where we want to go. But while doing what? While grounding in the realities. And the realities in planning are not fixed, they are changing. And this is really create a very interesting design challenge, that you want to follow a vision while respecting reality, while respecting the ecosystem, while merging, while weaving, but you are also imagining that these realities are changing. So this is the core of the request. Then can you go to the challenges? And this is what I usually do when I write a brief. I become very demanding. When I'm the designer myself, I try to reduce, but yeah. So beginning. So you see, I have to give you some idea of the challenges. No, beginning of the challenges. Yeah, because it will be again page number 5, page number 4, page number 5. Yeah, yes, page number 4. Yeah. So again, as I explained, the master plan to vision, the human experience. Any design should revolve around the human experience, the starting point. I mean, what kind of living environment do you think is nourishing? Have you been in any traditional city in Europe or in the Middle East or they are always designed about the human need, the human experience, right? Have never seen anybody going to street to celebrate the presence of pipes in the ground, right? You are designing for the human, right? So this is a very big emphasis, how to design for the human experience and the diversity of the experiences. The crown was designed not as a singular experience. The crown was designed, if everybody looks at the model, you can see it in a second. It's a plethora of experiences, changing in dimensions, changing in light conditions, changing in relation to water. So it already indicates that this is a very rich experience. Next, diversity, next page, yeah. Bioclimatic principles and urban form, how while we are working in a very tough environment, the climate of Oroville is extreme hot and humid. It's not the traditional hot and humid. How you respond, and you have this elaborate geometry, but then how this could correspond to the bioclimatic conditions. Experiencing water. Water is a practical need, but is a spiritual element. How both of them could come together. Mobility, another very complex issue. Connections and permeability. I think it was originally designed with this as one of the major conceptions. A full permeability, which I think very good for the bioclimatic situation also. So this was one of the major elements and very important. City of nature. There would be no planner who would be given a chance to work on the complex challenge of Oroville today and say no. The reason is very elaborate vision and then very elaborate developed ecosystem. And I am still very confused why we are not enjoying this challenge. Almost every day, why we are, this is a huge and very beautiful design challenge. How can you design through the vision, but how can you make the best of the ecosystem? Experimental Oroville work should show some experiment feeling. It's where else, right? Dimensions and proportions, again, the dimensions and the proportion has to be designed for the human experience. A pedestrian path has a specific proportion that we know is very different from the proportions of the vehicular path. Next. Density and phasing, another complex. Enrich existing developments, obviously. Energy, it's major component of, has to be integrated in design. Design for change. Any city is a dynamic object, a dynamic element. It's always changing, and when you design it, you have to design it to change. Harmony through planning guidelines. And at the end, the designs, all the designs should try to show three weaves. Weave between the different ideas between the architects, weave with the experts who has presented in the 3 days workshop conference, and then weaving the ecosystem and the vision. And we asked them to do all of this in that short time, which is almost impossible. So with that, I think the next will be to see the video, right? Yeah. Thank you.
So yes, now we will go, we will watch a 40-minute video of all the highlights of the final presentations of the architects and their designs, where they already integrated some rounds of feedback from these various groups that were presented. So I think we can start. Yes.
The main point where we started was what is important: air, water, trees, the soil. What happens in urban environments when the more build-up there is, more impervious surfaces, it increases the runoff and it reduces the capacity for the ground for the water to percolate into the ground. Something Islam mentioned also is the heat island effect. Something very important to keep in mind. It comes back, the more buildings, the more heat gets absorbed in the buildings, which radiate out, and vegetation can help a lot, shading the surfaces of the buildings so that they don't heat up. Because last time I had mentioned that concrete is not the way forward for everything. Of course, we can't avoid it totally, but so there's so much available. I mean, we have our homegrown poured earth and rammed earth and compressed earth blocks. The ancient techniques of lime plaster, of lime, building with lime. But what this just shows is that the areas with a high percolation is where somehow the forests have developed mostly. So I came up with this very schematic little plan for the infrastructure and to have precast conduits in the places where we will in the near future need more infrastructure to come in. Yeah, so these are the precast conduits. It can be all very neatly laid in. And these are these humongous junction boxes. Of course, I've now learned that the infrastructure, it's too early to decide on what the infrastructure will be, but that will be decided by the experts when things are more clear. My little sketch of the conduits which could follow the contour of the ground and be used as cycle and pedestrian walkways. They could be above ground where it's necessary for the water to flow under, or in the ground, the water can flow over, they could be sealed. The road actually just needs to be as wide as an emergency vehicle, so 3 meters, this is supposed to be 3 meters, is sufficient. And it turns out that it's also the most comfortable and the most safe if you give priority to cyclists. And then you have the different sections throughout the crown, which would be from very narrow, and then just the different experiences, but always making sure that there's sufficient shade. And just for, I think what makes sense is to keep the infrastructure always in the exact same position, but everything else can meander around that. The different aspects of what could all happen on this stretch of crown, which I wanted to look at in more detail. Then moving on from the solar kitchen, having that stretch in center field between the center guest house and solar kitchen could become like a really a pedestrian cyclist thing with lots of green. And then I wanted to look at the solar kitchen again, so I went into a little bit more detail. And the idea was this is the edge of the line of force. So I just looked at like what would the movements be? This is the Solar Kitchen PTTC. Where do people come from? Where do they go? And then create shade with trees and temporary shading structures until the trees are big along the edges, where we could have eateries and whatever, and in the center keep an open space, which could be like a sort of a step well for activities. I just wanted to emphasize is to maximize the minimum and plan to allow for the future to be planned and build only for now. We don't know what wonders the future holds. Thank you.
How can I bring together the image of the galaxy, its interpretation through the master plan right of ways, and land that in the context and see what really remains when I do that? How exciting does it become? It's something which I always wanted to do. I always felt like, hey, how does this image, which is not realistically implementable now, today, for many, many reasons, and I think it was never wished for to be a one-is-to-one model to be built. It's an ideation, it's a process. So for me, I always wanted to see how does that change when it comes into contact with the many aspects of life in this area. This would be then a kind of thinkable traffic concept where we accept these roads as a given. We can't necessarily change them. They're often on Parambook, or they are so established that they are just reality. We also look at villages and how can we address the impossible situation of heavy traffic of buses and all going through the villages, so trying to create bypasses wherever possible. Here at Irumbai, where I have the temple, which could be a very beautiful spiritual arrival point at the road from Koot Road over Red Earth Riding School, coming here next to the visitor center, or extending down to the road which goes to Oro Orchard, Hope, and then into Eda and Chavadi, or coming up from here, Bomai Palayam, Jaima Corner, going a little bit up on the already paved road, and then bypassing Kulapalayam village on the outer line of the master plan area. So here we see the different roads. I have, for example, Certitude, which in all our proposals will be a large transport node. It will be a switch of, it will be a filtration system as it is now already. Of course, we need to support our security systems much more, because that is, I think we have 38 different entry points into Oroville. So we need to somehow focus on protecting them. So that here, this is one major point. We keep, or maybe I should start with that one. This is for all the traffic, the 1 million visitors coming into Oroville every year. They would arrive from the west and would have an arrival point, maybe together with the line of Goodwill, using the existing facilities, and switch, get to know Oroville, and then switch into a different mode of transport and then go into the city. I have the existing road here from Certitude through here. I have the Crown Road, which can have different experiences, and I have a large access here for the industrial zone from Kotakarai and just south of Alankupam. I can form a loop road with just the extension of existing roads over here. Maybe in another 6 years, Oroville could look in parts already like that. And to me, it's a strong image. It's something which is still recognizable as a very unique urban form, which I think is fitting with Oroville's understanding and larger purpose. And it's connected. It really respects the ground realities, trying to make the best out of a difficult situation.
So this was the first exercise which we did, which led us to an understanding of the geometry which happens at different parts of the galaxy. We feel that the edges needs to also be really emphasized, because that's a really core aspect of the crown. We see it as one building, and we see it with an architectural eye as a singular piece of built environment. And the last line is the most important for us, is this shouldn't divide the town. Yeah, and that's, I think, the key. So where we start looking at the empty spaces, the spaces between the buildings in the galaxy model, and define them and use them as catchment for watersheds.
Water is life, the point of meeting of several water streams culminate in a line of force of life.
Okay, this is just a small slide we had done last time to indicate how the development could happen, integrating the existing trees and the water catchment areas. And actually the key is defining the edges of the building with in the spirit of the edges in the crown. And we let different people build different parts of the whole crown, wherein this whole sense of authorship almost melts away in a way.
Looking at how the crown holds the forest rather than the forest making way for the crown, the parks are holding the whole master plan. Shinrin Yoku, which a lot of people said, wow, that sounds lovely. An invitation for mindful movement through planned walkways and cycle paths, built environment that is planned as a nudge to pause and bringing in a sense of delight.
This connectivity is the most important. So this is the difference which I wanted to highlight from the previous section. The crown is from here to here. So for 8 months when you take the sun chart and see in the hottest time where the street might be hot, but we realized while doing the model that the moment you connect the street on top at different levels, not just the lines of force but other parts as well, this will become much easier for us to solve. We can achieve quite a bit of shade even in the hot summer for people to move through. The aspiration is it should be something we have not seen, and I think that's where we should head towards. Yeah, what that means, God knows. Yeah, but we should consciously avoid going where we have gone.
And one major feedback in the last round was also to take the entrance serious. The proposed entrance from the 99 master plan, and I think this is very valid to kind of, if we as Orville want to have some proper welcoming gesture, then it should be planned. In this version I included also the transport node, which is in the 99 plan. I think there's not much that speaks against it actually. Our first step to solve the parking solution, maybe to get something in place like a car sharing. We could have parking houses here. I try to become to get a little bit more specific with the plazas around the crown and identifying centers where it would kind of be natural to have these plazas. Then the youth plaza, quite naturally along the crown, and maybe one cultural plaza in front of Kalabumi, establishing the heart of the cultural zone. And this maybe could be a place where you would have a little bit of nightlife in Orville, where some cafes could also be open until 10 or something. What makes the Crown Road connect inside out? And my idea was more that if you really bring density up to the road and the road becomes the center, then it actually connects both sides. The interplay of the major plazas, finding these spaces, the three themes, the dense city, the village, the megastructure. Yeah, so you kind of see the more loose ensemble, and then with one line of force touching the crown, then starts the next theme. Visible, how it could look like with these different elements. So this would be the hexagon as the communal space, a town hall, the water tower, and then some amphitheater with some shading structure, and these typologies which have deep facades, can also allow for green and go far into the street with their roofs.
We looked at the water flow, the way it is flowing. According to that, we kind of created different water catchments. these could be either reused or recharged depending on the kind of development which is there around. And the idea is to basically create some kind of soft landscaping elements around those water bodies so that they're not left alone, but they are maintained properly. Based on the feedback last time, we tried to look at the geometry and put the water along that. The kind of spaces that we've created all along, we're trying to see how we can experience the crown. Now what we're trying to do here is actually fixing 2.5 meters as infrastructure corridor, and mainly for the HT and LT line and maybe OFC also, because we need that ring as per the electrical master plans. What you see here is basically the darker gray is vehicular, which is 4 meters, and that's not always along the crown ring. It is going in and out. This is of course conceptual.
So this is the 4-meter road which will go which is already existing, and then there is a 2.5-meter infrastructure corridor that will go, and the rest of the space which is on the other side is totally like that becomes as a space where the buildings are set back, and create spaces and all those things. So here what we try to do in this is Sante. So here this is more like so here the road comes, and then the road kind of deviates so that the ambulance drop point is there near to Sante, and then there is a water body here around which the Sante campus can expand, and that kind of water is also good for healing and everything. And then there are other water bodies which are more public spaces which are there, and then here can be also more wellness related things and everything. So the thing is here, if you see, there is a courtyard like space which was also we tried to get from the galaxy. So there were nice courtyards on the which was falling on the center of the crown. So we tried to create those kind of things with the shade elements. So for example, this is the road that we said will close after 5. So when it closes, and there are several of them in different places in different forms, when we close them, that space can be taken up by something else, and there can be an activity.
North is up. There is a lot of, we all know that this road has always been very sunny. So what is important is to build across and close knit, have trees which would give shade and noise barriers, etc. So that's very important also climatically to organize those spaces, to have that stretch of road more usable and more as, like we say, street as a room.
It's concrete and green and blue and whatever, you can build it. You can build it as it is. But do we want to do that? Do we want to go beyond the map in the sense, what is it? The idea? Today, Marie and Neha were talking about the parks, the 4 parks, and the values. What does it represent? What does it really represent? Can we get kind of deeper into that? And see what it reveals. For us. When we are looking at. Really trying to bring that map on the territory in a way. So I believe we always meet somewhere in between. Insights, that we've collectively got, or some of them, have been shared, are kind of worth noting. And I kind of overlaid it, Marie's and Ganesh and Neha's, and then the topography, the negative of the galaxy, as a positive. They're looking at it as something that could kind of pre-exist in a way, and that doesn't necessarily come from just the form of it. I feel it can come from the, from our experiences with water, with how the slopes are working, where the trees are, all that. This Marie's diagram also was fascinating, where the crown, can obviously, we all have kind of understood that it doesn't need to be the same width. So it can change in different zones. So I kind of looked at the Dharkli area and the industrial zone. So I was looking at these areas, basically trying to draw what is there, in terms of pathways, in terms of canyons, in terms of the trees, some resonance with the galaxy, but doesn't have to be literally that. What I'm trying to do here with the crown here is to actually have it as a kind of a porous, positive mass, which allows for that percolation. It can also, we were talking about duct that one can walk into, which can be integrated within this. Some of the cross sections we've been thinking of what this could be, and it could have a lot of character. This built landscape. It could have, gabions, could have, eventually moss growing or things growing. One could enter the line of force. And create this very interesting urban form here. It's basically everything is on stilts, but allowing for the forest to weave in. So this is like the area in between the two lines of forces. This is very doable, I feel, where we have a character which we can, in a way, define like how much areas, let's say in terms of percentages that we allow it to be really close to the crown. So we could create sort of these zones almost, and have that character emerge.
Buildings that would integrate water systems like wastewater and rainwater, integrating windmills and kunds so that we have a constant flow of water from the lower levels of the crown to the upper levels, to the upper kunds. And that water can flow by gravity subsurface to irrigate the whole inner city area. The inner city area can then be water rich without drip or sprinklers.
We have detailed areas of the crown, starting from Humanscape and going all the way up to Solar Kitchen and beyond. We also have woven this child-friendliness into our crown experience. We wanted to suggest is in order for us to slowly make the transition to having the crown unmotorized, we are suggesting to get a couple of e-shuttles. To demarcate that this is really supposedly non-motorized, we suggest to put some pots on the road with plants.
A line of water, a water channel, which we propose to run in 8 sections along the crown. It's called the Lakshman Rekha. It's a physical barrier that vehicles cannot cross. The other purpose of the Lakshman Rekha was to irrigate under the surface all the vegetation.
We have reduced the road width to 4 meters, which should be then enough for the e-shuttles and the e-cycles and everything.
We should have one place in Auroville everyone can go to any time of day or night. It's active and it's buzzing. So that's around the Solar Kitchen. You have an inner ring of buildings that are going like that, which are completely following Mother's principle of no money. These are co-working spaces. Anybody is wanting to start an enterprise in Auroville will have a desk and internet connection. That's the Auroville Lounge. Upstairs is indoor games. And then you have a bio pool. It's a natural pool which does not use chlorine or ozone or anything. It's just root zone filtration. At Solar Kitchen Plaza, we feel that there could be a handicraft bazaar. Bazaars where village people as well as Aurovillians can put up their craft. One of the big feedbacks that came was to integrate the schools of Auroville in one campus.
So what you see in yellow is what we consider this campus area. It has all the existing schools, and it's also the area where the future schools will develop. And we have really detailed now some of the improvements. Mandapam's a flexible use building, a bit like Sauchu, with public toilets and a storeroom attached, and in this case, little study tables, a sensory footpath, science and musical exploration for kids. We have placed a playground there. We have planned a construction playground.
At the Youth Center Bliss Forest, we feel that there could be a canopy walk. Darkali, can this be a place of peace, concord, and harmony? So the lines of force, can it be an impression of Mother's flowers? The flowers are actually camouflaging the tree houses and the trees from above. So you have big flower that's tensed, it's tensile net, and that collects water into a 100-liter water tank. This is a section of Oro Dam, how it will be. We're talking of lightweight buildings made mostly in wood, regenerative materials, regenerative design principles. And this is something eminently usable for the eco-sensitive zones, at least the lines of force, to integrate boardwalks and canopy walks on the grounds. For the infrastructure, we propose a combination of a central infrastructure corridor, which has electrical and OFC, combined with decentralized loops. First steps: animate the street life with street furniture, make transit mandapams. Can we do happy streets? The full stretch of the built crown from Mahalakshmi home to Solar Kitchen, can we convert it on Sundays for people to be free to walk and do their thing?
And then comes the park, the four park, and I imagine the park as being the green macrostructure of the galaxy. So we are talking a lot of the line of force being the macrostructure for the city, for the building. The park, for me, are the macrostructure of the galaxy. And they create this type of pattern from the ground, I mean, from the sky, from a satellite picture, but also on the ground, a certain type of density of plant forests, and that's why there is a need of a certain width of the park that we need to respect. If you start to not to have enough width for your green infrastructure, for your green structure, macrostructure park, you will start to lose it. You will just have some plantation, but you don't have a park. And then, while the green circle here, it was more following the path. Here, for me, what is more important is the mass of forest, and the paths are around and you meander into it. So it's a bit the same idea of here. Now we are in Makali Park. I didn't increase the size of the park. It's about 300 meters. That's where, we are in youth center. That's where trees have been cut recently, while it's a park. Or it will be a park. That's the idea. It's this access here that is today existing and that helped to feed the cultural zone, block completely all the sport grounds, the school, to the other side, on that side. So are we ready to leave our vehicle here or here? Again, it's not only a personal effort or individual effort. It's a public effort. We need to create, I saw on the previous presentation, e-cycle pool, transition, mobility, parking. So all this can be done, and can be done if we are enough on our cycle or on our e-cycle to ask for this change. So that was between the library and the Kalpana. You remember I mentioned the big, large open space which is already paved. My idea is to reclaim the paved area and to create shade, light structure, really to recreate a life, urban life.
So we just began with looking back at the inspiration given by the mother and her sketch. We also thought that it would be interesting to see how the galaxy model or the Oroville plan in general and the directional meanings and what could be the parallels between what symbolism mother gave and this. The concept of Pada Vinyasa, which is a 9x9 grid module as per the Vastu Shastra texts.
The first grid that you saw, that was divided in 9 squares, so these intersections, these becomes the Marmasthanas. And then the center is the Brahmasthana, like also in the last presentation we spoke about the banyan being the center and holding the very potent energy.
So over this exercise we tried to strengthen the industrial zone, which is the north of our plan.
There is this movement of the individual journey, which is kind of anti-clockwise, which is going inward. And then, so we tried to connect the Marmasthanas of the part, the whole, to the symbol of the inner reflection Matrimandir. We took the amphitheater as our collective symbol, and then joining them to the marmasthanas and other points in the energy grid.
To begin with, on this side, we have the first line of forest building, which also is a part of Darkali forest. The idea of this community food experience, and how we name it is like a community food court. This could start becoming something like a eat street, which could become more active in the evenings. Here would be an interesting place to start doing the place where the construction activities, like the storerooms for construction, some kind of manufacturing that could start happening. We need to have some places for things like the postal service, common delivery points, delivery services that could be there. Like a cluster of services, which is more like the services for the people working in the industrial zone. So things like day laundry, some kind of tea stall, some kind of lounges, things like what master plan document mentions about the activities on the ground for the industrial zone. Things like hostels and all can start already be happening in these areas, because we'll see that would also add to the night presence in the area. Something like a center for arts and crafts training, a youth plaza, which very well reflects the idea of the cultural zone and mixing of the industrial zone, which could have markets and vocational trainings, a little bit spillover of the crafts and arts center.
If we look at the marmasthanas, around these areas, what we would propose is to have more open spaces and not really built spaces.
So this is just a diagram of how we see that some of these activities could have the night presence.
We looked at industrial zone was also this lines of forces which are going to which are planned to be quite tall towards the center. We started realizing that crown is not just the ground, but it's also the canopy that's planned on top. And then it also took back to this idea of the changing phenomenology of the crown. And we have actually in Vastu Shastras the proportions, and the proportions have different names. So 1:1 and so on. And the highest one is kind of 1:2, which is Adbhutam. And Adbhutam means something that is wonderment.
We are really talking about what was existing around here, what is there right now, and what is yet to come. We say the industrial zone is the driver, and it can help us develop. We do this development very consciously.
Looking at water, food, community, social capital as the core of planning, how we can adopt this to reclaim the water we consume every day. Used water, reclaimed water, decentralized, you putting into crown, and then utilizing that to other things, growing food, recreation, and so forth. Then using that water to grow food around Auroville and bioregion. And I looked at youth center as the starting point within Crown. This is one of the view of that street. As an architect, we look at planning and designing through very solving problems, or meeting the client's requirement. Sometimes we forget that there is a life in that. So I'm trying to see, it's not, there is no book for bringing life into street, but it's mostly organic, mostly bringing communities together, different age groups together, somehow combining that. So what I'm trying to do here is give that opportunity to create or to happen, to organically, it should somehow evolve. See how some scenarios on Crown, this water being there, and buildings are elevated from the ground, where the bottom bit is mostly for public and to thoroughfare. One of the plazas being like this water built environment and gathering spaces.
We don't want to put our buildings far away to avoid the road. In fact, we want to have parts of the built spaces, which are like semi-covered spaces, to speak to the road so that there is an extension of the street onto the spaces beyond. That crown for us is a place where we see our culture unfolding. We had tried before was to take the footprint of the galaxy, and now what we have done is we have interpreted that into different scaled spaces interconnected. The space around the street is kind of punctuated, making it wider at places, making it narrower at places by activities which will be used by us. We reworked on the form and the feature of the youth space, where it is partially on the road and partially away, and they have their own inner space. Complementing that is another space, more public in nature. The built faces have their own character, one of them that allows the movement of public, the other side or the third side which has, expression of silence and privacy, both. We had talked about crown as a bund, and that means that we are not just holding water at the crown and flooding it. The water has been conserved, and as per the experts, in different parts connected through. One of them is crown as a bund, and then of course it's beyond the crown as well. This is without the built areas, the green, blue and the red. So we are talking about built spaces which are having mixed land use, and of through connections which are shaded connectivity. Very important to use semi-covered spaces for internal mobility. So what kind of porosity are we thinking of? How much of percentage of porosity is required so that the through connectivity is facilitated? The idea of built spaces conversing with the street is facilitated. Which are the common spaces which the two plots will have to, put together so that it's a larger common space? The water and soil conservation guidelines that have to come with every plot as well, of what kind of water conservation, where, how much, and so on and so forth. And yes, space for impromptu activities to unfold, that should be not plotted. And here now we have again worked with connecting across. So at parts the crown road or street, if I may say, is wide. At parts it is narrow, both for a reason, both giving different chances and different opportunities and different environment.
The mobility lane becomes more like a service corridor, and it's like Mother calls it, it's a zone of transport. So the combination of this mobility lane and these building character is for me the beginning of this exercise. So here I have superimposed the cultural zone concept plan on this satellite image, and here you see the crown is crossing over at different points, but the buildings are actually not necessarily laid along the crown. They are sometimes inward looking, and they very much represent this void or zonal concept, and they create these different clusters. So it's not like the urban design differs on both sides. So it's not like creating a row of buildings on both the sides of the crown street. These are the building forms. If you see the scale of these buildings, and this is the scale of Kripa. So it is possible to create big buildings with a lot of space in between without cutting any trees and retaining the language which Roger is talking about. So here I have highlighted only the mobility lane. The spaces in between can be water bodies. They can even be visual water bodies integrated in architecture, and even the greens. And here actually the important point is the input for infrastructure will be as the zones are crossing, probably we will have to bring the building forms much closer to the mobility lane, because otherwise the scale when the buildings are crossing will grow enormous, and we don't want to create pedestrian bridges. So that the scale needs to be retained. So probably the structural forms or structural supports will need to be closer to the mobility lane. Actually, this is, if we forget about the mobility lane, this becomes the right of way, and you can see the right of way becomes something else. It becomes more like a social space between the buildings, and we forget about the road is passing through. And this was actually the program given by Cultural Zone Group, and they write it as a journey of joyful immersion in the mobility through spaces. So this part can be later densified where Kalabhumi stretches. And if you see, the immediate cluster of development can be near Kripa, and we can, even if we do some buildings on both the sides, actually it can create that cluster. Another input of this exercise would be that not just the building palette in the crown needs to be same, but the building palette across the two buildings also need to be similar so that we actually relate to these clusters. And also the inner facades need to speak to each other. Otherwise, we don't actually read it as one cluster. And if you see the progression of parks through the city, actually we come from the green belt, which is the forest and the farms, and then it starts opening out in the form of more greens. And when it actually intersects the crown, there is a zone of activities. And then you go to the innermost meditative plaza, which is Matra Mandir. This can be created exhibition spaces, so it can be created without, it can be just mounts which are created, no need to have steps to come back to the plan, so it can become something like that. So the mobility, here I have shown only the mobility lane, which is actually in the same nature of the other spaces on two sides, and this can be water, and you can go from future school or cross here with exhibition spaces, and these are these outdoor cinema and the steps on the other side. Purpose of this exercise is this language can be treated in different zones to have varied experiences without losing the essence of the zone and still retaining the language and the galaxy concept. So this is where I have my two crowns.
Is the mic? Yeah. Yes, thanks to all the architects for all their amazing work. And just to say that these videos are available on the Oroville Dreamweaving YouTube channel and can be viewed anytime there. There is also an exhibition of their work outside, both downstairs and upstairs in the foyer. I think the exhibition is open today and for 2 more days until Monday. So we will go have a short break now. There are some refreshments, I believe, in the small amphitheater to the right. And we will be back in 10 minutes. So please try and keep the break short. So if everyone could come back into their seats, we still have a lot to cover. All right. Just a short note on the videos. These are all excerpts of longer videos that are available on our Dreamweaving YouTube channel. So even the architect presentations, we have standalone presentations on the YouTube channel. And the coming video is reflections on the overall process from various groups of participants, from the experts, from the focus group, from the randomly selected citizens, from the architects, from VSF. And these are also all available in longer versions on the YouTube channel of Dreamweaving. So now we will watch another video with those excerpts of the reflections from various stakeholders that took part in the process about this experience of dreamweaving the Oroville crown.
I feel that it's a project that I had wanted to see happen a long time ago, and it's rewarding to see this process actually taking place now.
I've enjoyed it to the point where I think we could have more of that. I'm really hoping it reaches a conclusion that it is integrated, because it has been something that I felt synthesized many views, considering where we've come now, especially considering recent events. It did feel like it gathered energy from many different views. So that I found very positive.
It has been an interesting process, quite diverse, and I think challenging not only for me but for the people presenting, because receiving feedback from people who are not technical, I think, is challenging and might not be what actually the architects would have wanted to hear, but I think most of them actually received the feedback quite well and were enthusiastic about it. For me, it has been enriching, and I've learned quite a lot, not only about the current situation and where we are going towards, but of the various possibilities that we have actually.
When I got the mail from the group, I was a little bit confused. Am I right person for this? Because I was not clear. No, I didn't have that clear idea about dreamweaving, because I heard this, but there was not much awareness about this. But when I asked one of the facilitator, is it okay? Because I don't have any technical, I'm an animal care social worker. She said, it's okay. You don't need to be any special. You just need to be there, because that's why you selected randomly with the community. So people like me who work for Oroville, we never get a chance to involve with these kind of activities. So first day for me, it was a little bit confused. Okay. Then I listen just 1 hour and I just observe other people. Everyone is same like me. There is nothing special. There is I felt equality, so that's very important. I was really excited to continue this. And end of this session, I got more clarity about Oroville, what is crown, what is galaxy. More about Oroville, that's very important. Just single word Oroville means what is Oroville. Then I am understanding. I got an opportunity to learn more about this.
This is some kind of a very lifetime experience, having so many architects who have a very good understanding of Oroville, who are not also new, but rich experience here. And they've also used the plans that have been worked by other architects in the past. So they have taken as a guidance and worked to it. So it's really, we can't imagine this kind of a work being done, the effort that they really put, and going into very detail, to see what is existing and what needs to come. So this all is a very good planning process. So I'm really happy to be this part of the process. But I was a little bit on the thing are only the architects going to develop the entire city? But when the process went through, when they invited people from all different focus groups and also community members, so it's a whole process that includes all parts of Auroville or all people of Auroville into this planning process. So which is the specialization of this dreaming process.
To me, this was very, there was a lot of listening happening. For the first time in 3 months, I felt in a place, but not in a space of anxiety or, frustration. So I felt really a space to dream.
At least I'm not aware of a situation where so many architects, almost more than 30, but if you include all the other interventions, it's really a large number, and they've all come together. And they're all getting over their personal spaces, contributing together to something that doesn't, at least materially, benefit them. So if you think of the aim of Auroville, it's all about all of us coming together and be filled with self-giving. And that self-giving and that wholeness of self-giving gives birth to this collective realization, to this fraternity of collaboration. So what's been wonderful is to see the level of collaboration with all the people.
The space has been held really nicely, and it feels like everyone knows what's happening. And I think then that gives everyone that feeling of confidence in the process, and so they then adapt to that, and it becomes very secure and safe. I think there's two really nice things that are coming through. One is ideas, and some are a bit naive and a bit sort of up in the air, but I think that's important because it's like you don't want everything to be perfect and perfect to go and ready. So I think it gives us a spectrum of ideas. No, some are really practical, and yeah, you could do that tomorrow, and some are like, woo, so that's good. I mean, I think that's healthy. It's not that everyone feels confined and constrained by what they think they should be doing. And then I think there's a sort of a clear understanding of perspectives and ground realities. So there's the aspiration to create the galaxy, but the ground realities today are different than they were in 1960. And so I think that sort of information is being quite well presented and positioned. And you see it it's still fragmented between different presentations. But I think at the end of the process, that information will come out as a coherent body of information, which is really important and interesting. If someone wants to do a kind of an intelligent DPP that takes into effect the ground realities, I think that's what we need, and that's how we can express it to someone who's coming in to do the work.
It's a very inclusive program. It's a very inclusive atmosphere. There was a willingness to understand and listen to each other, which has gone all the way till now. So yeah, that's why I have goosebumps again, because yeah, it's fantastic.
It's been really good. It's something that I really wanted to be in place, let's say. And I see that this is basically addressing the issue from the start and understanding how to best carry this forward rather than just trying to push things forward. Wherever it is in the world, this is the sort of, not necessarily exactly the same process, but what you're doing is you're doing polls and surveys with the people that would be affected, and that's the only way you can actually bring these things forward.
The interesting idea was bringing them together on a platform where you would look at timelines. And what I mean by timelines is actually looking at the past, present, and the future. For me, this whole process of dreamweaving was quite incredible because the usual suspects of the people, planners, and the program has been brought together, but also whether it was just a happy coincidence or the grace of Mother, I can't say. Almost all proposals look at the present and the future simultaneously.
Yeah, it was quite unexpected because we came and we started presenting. I thought we'll be more talking, but we started working and presenting. And I think that is the key to bringing out anything relevant on a table. What we did here was we came here, we put out what we really saw was a possibility of, the existing scenario in Auroville. the existing realities in Auroville, how to, relate the galaxy plan to those realities.
We were not as hopeful when we started as we are now, because there were a lot of questions, doubtful and all these things. But then we went on, because every step of it, every coming together, every meeting that we had with each other, all the discussions gave us a little bit of spark to move forward. The experience a human has got through this process, the opportunities that it gave through this process is never going to be taken away from me. I mean, as so same for whomever has participated. That I felt is very much needed for us, and it will reflect somewhere in the progress of Auroville.
It was a long process, very dense process, with a lot of movement toward other people and then inwards. I learned a lot, and I go back to a lot of important things. I read again what Roger Anger envisioned for the galaxy. I read again the chart of Auroville. So it was quite good for me as a Aurovillian also to reconnect with the core of my existence in Auroville. There was a lot of joy also in creating and inventing a possible future which is not only imposed on us, but that we can create ourselves.
When we started it, we kind of knew where we were going, but during the process, I realized probably we got too involved, basically, yeah? And then it becomes very intense, and you can't let it go, and you have to keep going. And that's where we found ourselves, yeah? It's like each question you ask, you get some answers, but then you have other questions which you need to resolve. And then till you do it, you can't sleep. So yeah, we're glad it's over actually. For now at least, part one is over, let's say.
Overall, given the task, I think it was really greatly organized. I hope it can serve as a blueprint for other planning processes that we have to do in the community, not only related to architecture, but about general aspects of planning.
It's been a learning experience for us also, right from the expert session to the presentations of each architect and to the deliberations to the concluding sessions. We have seen how the ideas also have converged and what are the critical areas that have emerged. So in that sense, it has helped us. And the process, of course, has brought a lot of diverse groups together to work with each other. Very much part of Auroville existence, and we wish to kind of take that further and build upon that.
I think it's been I'm absolutely amazed, firstly, the amount of talent that resides in Auroville itself. I mean, I'm not just talking about the architects, but I'm people experts in various fields, whether water or, infrastructure, or even in the different arts and, music and filmmaking and etc. So that's been quite a revelation that how such a small set of small community produces excellence. That's, I think, amazing. The other part of it is that I see fantastic enthusiasm for the process that has been set in place now. And I see a sort of let's say, a common direction sort of coming out of this, emerging out of this process. And that's very important now that if you're talking about a participatory planning system, then how do you get this in place is a very important aspect. How do you carry everybody together? Because any planning process is a complicated process. It's not a simple thing of just doing drawings or putting up, nice colors to say this is the land use. It is much more complicated because it's the dreams, aspirations, and hopes of the existing community. And they're also setting up precedents for the community as it grows of people who will come by in the future and the kinds of aspirations they will have. So I think it's, and their children, of course, children and grandchildren, because communities proliferate over time. So I think it's very important to have this kind of a community participation.
That was some excerpts. There is more to see on our Dreamweaving YouTube channel. And yeah, our next point will be taking further the evaluation aspect, which will be presented by Suryamai and Helen.
Hi, everyone. So the evaluation of the Dreamweaving the Orbital Crown process is, of course, very important because it is how we integrate the feedback from the participants in the process. And the evaluation was designed by the Citizens Assembly team, and it included both the evaluation on the design elements as well as on the actual process itself. So myself, Helen, and Anshul from the CA team personally conducted the analysis, and we'll be presenting to you some of the key findings today. The complete analysis will be in the report, which I will share a little bit about later. And it will also include the final community evaluation, that is the evaluation from all of you, the wider community, which will be launched after today. It's a community survey. It's been announced in News and Notes and on Ornet, so you can find the links there. And we very much hope that you will participate in that as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Helen, who will begin by presenting the evaluation of the design elements, and then I will follow up on the evaluation of the process.
Okay, so just to say that the findings that come through, they came from a survey that we gave to everybody at the end of the process. So this was given to all the different participants, and we gave them time to reflect and even extra time to take it away because it was a very long information and form that we asked for. We asked the participants to respond to 12 categories. So these are based on the brief that Omar mentioned before. And we asked them really to respond on which up to 3 ideas resonated with the most and why on each of those elements. And then to analyze that, we looked within each category. So in the full report, it's actually got a summary for the different groups and what they found resonated most. But what we're going to see, what I'll present, is just a very brief summary of that. So we're going to be looking across all of the groups, what were the top ideas that resonated most. As I say, in the report itself, it will have the top 12 ideas for each design challenge. And it also will mention some of the architect names or the teams that were appreciated by those who responded. It wasn't always clear in the forms why they'd chosen particular teams. So for this, I'm just going to present the actual themes that came across as resonating most. And to say we picked these themes, or we sort of grouped these themes following the analysis of the data. So the first design challenge that we asked people to respond to was grounding the vision. So this was how much it synthesized and grounded the principles of the master plan and the essence of the 1968 vision model known as the galaxy. So in this one, the idea or design that resonated with most of the respondents was the need for sensitivity to an integration of context and ground realities, such as the bioregion and the canyons. And reasons given for this were that if we can synthesize this, people and nature, in a practical way, then we can start work immediately. Other ideas that resonated strongly were the idea of using the blue and green network to really help define the shape of the galaxy, the integration of conscious elements, so spiritual center, lines of forces, lines of light, and all the mother's qualities and symbols, and also using the galaxy model very much as a starting point or the essence of everything that comes through. So the second design challenge that people responded to was the human experience. So as Omar explained a little, this is really about how we create spaces for meaningful human experiences on a social, a cultural, and a spiritual level. So here the idea that resonated most strongly with most people was really around this creation of safe and inclusive spaces and paths. Noted quite a lot was for children and for elderly, but also for everyone. And again, reasons for this were to keep safe the youth that never ages. We also saw ideas that resonated strongly were the crown as a variety of different experiences, using different zones, buildings, materials, widths, and landscaping to create this. And then around sort of social spaces, so plazas and communal public areas, and having the crown as a space, a sort of plaza or a room, to really enable and foster connection with others. And many times this was mentioned, not just Aurovilians, but also those in the bioregion, those that work in Auroville. So specifically on diversity of experience, so this was asking people to think about how we can offer a diversity of experiences, yet retain continuity on the crown, looking at things like different zones, times of day and year, and visual interest. So here specifically, what came up most was really this need for this variety of experiences, zones, buildings, materials, widths, and landscaping. And reason given for this was really to create rich experience, a living expression of Auroville's unity in diversity. And then other things that people sort of picked out were very much around the need to define the different zones, so you could really feel when you went into different zones where you were through the environment, the materials, and the feeling you would get. And also the need to have multi-purpose spaces, so spaces that change over times of day, times of year, and even over sort of many different years. The next design challenge was around dimensions and proportions, so trying to find creative solutions for these challenges of width and scale on and along the crown. And here the idea or design that resonated most with people was about the need for the crown to change width according to the surroundings in order to minimize the impact in sensitive areas, help to kind of reduce and manage the traffic, and reduce monotony. And with this one, it was, again, the reasons given for this were to create a range of experiences and to enable the crown to really have this sense of breathing in and breathing out. And then other ideas that resonated strongly were the need for sort of diversity in the structures. Oh, no, first of all, in the structures, having buildings, bridges, and pergolas crossing the street, and then for diversity of buildings in heights, lengths, and shapes. So the next design challenge was around mobility, connections, and permeability. So looking at how we really solve those challenges of Auroville, how we move around to enable sustainable conscious movement. So here the top idea that sort of resonated most was around the need for public transport systems, these electric shuttles, electric buses, etc. And reasons given for this were around the fact that it could be an immediate action, and it would help to reduce traffic, change mobility habits, and increase social interaction. And then other aspects that came up resonating strongly with this slow, quiet, conscious transport that prioritizes pedestrians, and again, making sure there's this real sensitivity to an integration of the wider context and ground realities. So particularly how we plan our mobility in relation to the bioregion, the existing roads, and the canyons. So the next design challenge was the bioclimatic principles in urban form, so designing with the sun, the wind, the topography, water flow, flora and fauna of the region. So very strongly, this one came very strongly across all the groups, was the need for the shade throughout the day and across the whole year, from trees, buildings on stilts, overhangs, orientation, and other structures. Reasons, I think it's quite obvious, but this need for continual shade for pedestrian comfort, and people especially noted and liked the cooling that trees could naturally provide. So other aspects that resonated here were the possibility and need to reduce runoff through vegetation, permeable materials linked to waterways, and also the integration of indigenous trees, flora and species, because they require minimal maintenance and water. So the next design challenge was around water, so how we consider the flows of water as a solution for our water security, as well as a spatial experiential element. So here again, there was really strong resonance across all of the groups for prioritizing the creation and conservation of water catchment areas. And this came across in many ways, in systems integrated into buildings and urban form in a joyful way. Maybe those water flowers that we saw before, as well as prioritizing the natural water catchment areas. And along with this, there were also ideas around these kind of water features, waterfalls, water channels that resonated. Again, they're reducing runoff through vegetation or permeable materials, and specifically cones and columns as well. So the next design challenge was around city of nature, so the integration of the built spaces, both solids and voids, with natural ecosystems. So here, the idea that resonated most was this need to really synthesize city and nature. So people responded saying that they saw nature and city as inseparable and wanted to see an ever-changing interaction of built-up green, blue spaces. Also strongly was this support for using the existing form as assets, the trees and parks that are already there. And it was noted that many cities around the world are spending a lot of energy to revert to greener urban models, and we can do that from the start. And then again here, we saw the sensitivity and integration of the context, the ground realities. Green corridors were also mentioned many times, connecting green spaces and pockets, and integrating surface water collection and recycling. So you should probably note some of them have got more because it means there were sort of equal responses for them, for the top three. So on density and phasing, this was looking at how we really phase the implementation to respond for sort of changes of densities and over time. And the thing that resonated most here was really that need for phasing to build what is required now and then expand later as is needed. Alongside this, there were many ideas on how we could start with that, particularly mentioning sort of solar kitchen area and the plaza, the potential to prototype for places. Again, solar kitchen to Arca stretch came up a lot. Prototyping with mobility, so closing some streets, different times, different access points, and also creating quick shade structures. And with this, people also suggested to start with the activity clusters in each zone to reinforce the existing development, and again, using what's there as assets to begin with. So enriching the existing development builds on that a little bit. So this is how we can enhance the function, the quality, and the experience of what's already there in terms of building space and infrastructure. And again, this really echoes what we just saw. So starting with the activity clusters, building what's required and expanding later, and using the existing form as assets. So with this, I think the reasons were that it just seems logical, it will help with growth, and it will keep a certain warmth in the development of the city. So design for change was the next design challenge, and this was really looking about how we can plan for the future, how we can make it adaptable for what's needed. And here what resonated most was this potential for having these multi-purpose spaces that can change over time. So something that could be maybe transitional in use and then utilized for something else in the future, or maybe utilized for parking now or in future. And alongside this was the flexible approach to infrastructure. I think we saw the conduits mentioned. So those trenches came up a few times to allow for new technologies, and also phasing build what's required now and expanding later. And then the final design challenge that we asked people to respond to was around the essence of Oroville. So this is how we could express the poetry, the ideas, and the experimental nature of Oroville. And with this, the ideas that resonated most with people were really around that playfulness, that fun, and that sense of discovery. And when we're talking about discovery, it's not just sort of what's out there in the external environment, it was also about creating the spaces and the places and the pauses for us to be able to have that inner discovery as well. And again, very much the Crown as a space for social connection, again, came up strongly here, somewhere where we can meet people, we can connect, and then finally, art and beauty as an integral part of the Crown. So those are what came up for people responding on the design elements that they were looking at. So I'm going to hand back to Suriamai so she can also give you the responses on the process.
All right. So feedback on the process. So we collected feedback from all participants, including the Dreamweaving architects, via just a questionnaire at the very end of the process. But just to say, before we did that, we actually ended the whole process with various reflection circles, where each participant could just share, in a circle, what were the key highlights, takeaway of the process for them, so that everyone had a chance to kind of hear from each other in this sort of warm data way that you just did when you watched videos. I'm here kind of presenting a summarized analysis, but just that immediate impression, reflection, connection from others. And of course, as you saw, these were filmed. So the focus group discussions, you didn't see that in the highlights just now, you just saw interviews, but those focus group discussions were also filmed, and you'll get to see some of those as well on our channel. And so today what I'm going to do is just present to you the outcomes of that one questionnaire. Okay. So the process questionnaire was in two parts. The first just asked participants to rate their overall experience and also the very key aspects of a process like this one. So first was the clarity and quality of the content, the actual presentations by the architects. Second was the quality of interactions between the architects and other participants. Then the clarity of information provided by the organizing team. And finally, the facilitation support provided during the process. And just to say that why were we collecting feedback on this? Why does it matter? Well, it matters because it's designed to offer you, the community, as well as Vastushilpa and our own team, really a quick sense of the actual quality of this process, and also enable us in future to have a sense of what were some maybe key challenge areas if that came up at all. Okay, so I'm just going to run through very briefly these ratings. So to clarify a little bit these different participant groups, you've heard about that earlier, but I want to make that even clearer. So first, the peer and Dreamweaving architects, that's quite obvious. Technical experts, these were the multidisciplinary experts that also presented and participated in the process. Focus groups were focus group participants were participants who really embodied different aspects and areas of life in Orville, whether it was from education, from healing, from green work. So to really kind of bring these various perspectives of the Orville experience to the table. And then finally, the randomly selected participants. So you can see they all rated it pretty similarly, and it was pretty high in terms of their overall experience. Again, similar for the actual clarity and quality of the content. Similar again for the quality of interaction between the architects and other participants. Same for the clarity information provided by the organizing team, and for the facilitation support provided during the process. So clearly, overall, each participant group rated the various aspects of the process really positively. However, we do want to note that there were a few of the randomly selected participants that did drop out during the process. And the reasons that were given were just the really long day format, which was really tiring, and also, the kind of heavy sort of presentation after presentation, which people found difficult to integrate. So just to note that that is actually also a reality of some of the participants. Hello. Okay. So the second part of the questionnaire was more open questions, where people really had a chance to speak more freely about some of the different, just to get some more rich and detailed inputs. So we asked, what did you actually find to be the most important or valuable aspects of this process? What were the most challenging? What did you consider to be key takeaways? We also asked whether participants would recommend using this process for other collaborative planning or design topics in Orville, and just an open question if they had any comments or suggestions for the future. Okay. So most important or valuable aspects of the process. So what came up really high was involvement and collaboration. This is what people found incredibly valuable. So between the architects and the experts, and also between the participants in the room. So one participant said, really a movement of goodwill in the spirit of collaboration and participation. The other thing people found very valuable and important was the actual integration of views. So not just that everyone came to the table and collaborated, but there was a real, weaving together of various views. Which someone described really as a diversity of ideas and yet an underlying unity. The fact that this was actually a community response, and it was a harmonious community-based response to a crisis situation, and that it was an educational and structured process by which various points of views, technical expertise actually had a platform and a structure to work together on. So in terms of the most challenging, time was what came up again and again and again and again in different forms. The short time for presentations, which was obviously challenging for the architects. The short time for the overall process, how much we had to fit in such a short amount of time. So resulting in really long days and really tight last minute schedules, and just kind of the feeling of insufficient time to really fully integrate everything that was being offered and provided. So people were saying, yeah, I mean, the ability for architects to integrate their ideas with those offered in such a short time, also for us to grasp all the amazing gems that sprang from it. Not enough time to complete the process fully, to overlay all of the proposals into a community offer to Vastu Shilpa. Okay, so key takeaways. Basically, that involvement and collaboration enriches the process and the outputs developed, that when we have various people coming to the table, that we just get something better. That the Orville community really has an exemplary capacity to respond collectively to a challenge. Again, the educational aspect of the process, including being exposed to this diversity of perspectives. And a lot of people said, this process has a potential to be a model for addressing further planning needs and other community topics in Oroville. So just a few quotes here. The power when Orovillians work together, it's irresistible. There are a lot of competent people in Oroville in their fields. There's a need for more interaction and trust between these experts and the working groups which make the decisions and implement them. This process has been a great example for organizing things in a proper way and getting the community involved. Key takeaways are togetherness and community, proper organization, and that the whole process has been a masterclass in itself. So, in answer to the question, would you actually recommend using this process for other collaborative planning or design topics in Orville? It was an overwhelming yes. So every single participant who answered this question said yes. There was only one question in which this was left blank, so maybe the person missed it or they abstained, but otherwise, yeah, overwhelming yes. And people said, yeah, I mean, this in fact should be the template for even other parts of the galaxy plan, from larger to smaller parts. And others felt it should be integrated in our governance system. So in terms of the comments and suggestions, so inputs on the actual process and its organization, it was felt that we could actually widen the representation and have a wider diversity of participants and perspectives. So specific suggestions were to include more youth in the process, and also others than just architects in the actual designing process. There was suggestion to actually improve the information presented and provided, so more advanced sharing of the information, perhaps a clear format for presentations, and also clarity on whether and how the feedback had been integrated by the Dreamweaving architects. So we could have made some improvements there in the format. And yeah, the wish for a less tight time frame, specifically allowing time for more reflections and more informal exchanges, which this very tight and kind of structured process didn't really allow for. Many people also expressed their gratitude and appreciation for the process, for how it was led, for how participants engaged in it, which people found really heartening and really relieving in the crisis context in which it was held. So we have a quote here. I think that given the pressure Orville has and is experiencing right now and the unclarity of what will happen at any given moment, the process and all participants were showing a very beautiful side of Orville, its diversity, its capability, and its longing for union and process. Only that the rigid time frame necessary was difficult in terms of having more in-depth exchanges. There were also concerns expressed in this section, particularly around follow-up. In terms of implementation, saying, okay, we need to ensure that the process leads to implementation with quality on time. The challenging part is going to be from the organizers to get approval from the community or from the necessary groups to actually implement the ideas, maybe. And there was also a suggestion to actually begin follow-up within the community. So perhaps some small actions to follow up on the Crown to animate the spaces already while we wait for VSF. So to actually ourselves take some of that responsibility and initiative to kind of start to, animate these outcomes. So basically, in summary, participants were clearly positive about this Dreamweaving process and would recommend using it again for planning or other community topics in Oroville. It was hoped that in future the time frame would be less restrictive, allowing the process to include more space for informal exchanges and reflection, and that a wider representation of community members, especially youth, and perspectives, so widening designers to include other than architects, be included. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, all of this, the full analysis is going to be included in a report that the CA team is preparing, and that will be completed once we've actually gathered the community evaluation that I just mentioned. So just to give you a little preview, the report will begin just with an introduction and context. So what was the context in which this process actually arose and was held? A little bit of background on what is Dreamweaving, because it does have a history in this community. It'll include summaries of the analytical work conference, the Dreamweaving presentations, and all of the feedback received. A point on community engagement. So this was part of our team went out and collected inputs from schools. Conclusion and next steps. And just to note that access to all the recordings, the designs, the evaluation data, all of this will be in a resource guide that will be accessible alongside the report. And on that note, just to say from the Citizens Assembly team that, first of all, I want to look at Dreamweavers here, that, we're really happy that we're able to respond to the call for support from the Dreamweaving team on such an important community process. We're super grateful to all of the participants who put their time, their energy, their goodwill, into this process at the challenging time in which it was held with so many unknowns. Also, big thank you to all my colleagues at the CA for also having stepped in such an uncertain situation and given their dedication. The conclusion of the report, the delivery of the report will actually conclude the Citizens Assembly's involvement in this process. We are brought in to really support in the aspect of actually holding the process and evaluating it. And so we wish Orville, we wish all of us all the best with the next steps. And with that, I hand over to the Dreamweaving team.
So we're going to have, we're planning to have Doshi here, but it's not going to be possible. So we're going to have Jaideep now. So, but before I start, I want to say a few things, lest we forget. First, really a big applause to the CA team. I know this is not the time, but please, it's amazing. They are women power. Total women power. Sorry for the men who are in the team, but you're acknowledged as well. And they have just done an amazing job. We wouldn't have been able to do anything without them. And secondly, also to mention that all of this work is copyleft. So none of this work is anybody's property. And this is really also amazing that the architects have come forward, have been brave enough, to be there, to give all their best. And now anybody can run with this work. So we might see some surprises in the future, we don't know, but we're ready for it. So thank you also all the architects who did all this hard work. Okay, maybe we'll do thank you again, but I just, we forgot, because there's one big thing that we forgot also. We didn't introduce VSF. So I don't know how many of you know, but I think we should just say a note on that. So VSF stands for, actually it's VSC, because it's Vastushilp Consultants. And Vastushilp Consultants is the office of Doshi, B.V. Doshi in Ahmedabad. And Rajiv, whom you saw on the screen, is his partner, and also his son-in-law, and also an architect, married to his daughter, who's also an architect. And Rajiv Katpalia has been coming to Auroville. He has been here 3 times in this dream weaving process. And he has another partner called Jaideep, whom you also saw. He's an urban planner, and he has worked in America with SOM, a big firm, for many years, and then come back to India, and now he's teaching, and is also, hi Jaideep, can you hear us? No, not yet, huh? Not yet. Okay, and he's also partnering with Rajiv on this particular work. So the important thing to mention is that our secretary, Dr. Jayanti Ravi, had approached Vastushilp Consultants to do the detailed development plan for the whole of the master plan. So that was when we started. Actually, they were the kind of glue, I would say, and maybe the hope. And so we were working very closely with them. And they were actually very responsive and very positive about this process, and that gave us also a little wind in the back to kind of continue with this. So they have been very instrumental, and now we hope that with this next step, once they are on board, and that they will be taking this work forward. So actually our whole intention in these short weeks, months, was to give them kind of a suggestive document with all our dreams, what we always said, what David said, poetry, the raga of the crown or whatever, to give them that so they understand our aspirations, our dreams. And they try to put that into a plan, which is then, going to make them realizable. And so there is a time frame with that. And we're hoping that this will go forward in terms of implementation. So just a few words on VSF. VSC. VSF is the foundation, and VSC is the consulting arm of the foundation. So Jaideep, yes, can you hear us? So Jaideep is also based in Ahmedabad, and he's going to join us from there. Yes, it's coming. I think I already saw some. I jumped the train, isn't it? Sophie, is it going or? Okay. Okay. Yeah, Jaideep, can you hear?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jaideep. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Mute yourself.
Hello? Yeah, it's... Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. We just have another 20 minutes to go. We would like to do the conclusion.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all. Sorry about this. There is some kind of a glitch going on in terms of audio. We are glad to be here as Dreamweaving team has invited us again and again over a period of time through all the sessions, and we are amazed by the participation and the enthusiasm that all the community people have shown so far. And we wish all the best to the community people to carry on with this process in the other spheres of Auroville living. And I think that's a key that will sustain Auroville over a long run. So I think I'd like to be very brief. And we have had several talks with the Dreamweaving team. And I think they very well understand the importance of this process. So thank you everyone for having us, and we have opportunity to make some very good friends out there, and we hope to continue the same. So wish you all of us a best journey ahead. Thank you.
You get all three of us now. And we're going to run through a few essentials. Yes. But Omar's going to start.
Can we have the last presentation? Yeah. So I'm just looking for less light, please. So this is for us the last group of comments before we go to the Q&A. It's our conclusion. It's a last statement about the Dreamweaving experience. And we insisted to do this. It's almost it's part of our discussion. Was we went in the Unity Pavilion and we spoke about what we want to do, the narrative, what our intentions, what we want to achieve through the process. And we spoke candidly to the community, and we felt like we cannot conclude this without going back and say, this is what we managed to do. These are the challenges. These are still the hopes. Are we going to participate again in any collaborative process like this? What kind of atmosphere is needed for a collaborative process to work? And we just, it's a candid, it's a moment of, we just sharing. It's out of feeling of responsibility because of all of this, the support. I mean, I personally have been, in any place I have been going to, I was very touched by Aurovilians stopping me and giving support to the process, and we just felt we have to come back and open up and say, this is what we feel managed to do, but this is what we are still hoping, or this is what we cannot do. So next, yeah.
Yeah.
No, next. Ah. So how does this work?
You have to point there.
Point it at Mello. Point it at Melody.
Shoot at her. Yeah, shoot, yeah. Shoot.
Down arrow?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. I can do again. So, okay. Successes and hopes. And in this part, basically, we are sharing what we felt we managed to do, and then politely saying hopes, what we still believe, we hope would happen. So I remember in my first talk, I spoke of the narrative, and I spoke that there is a narrative that we feel doesn't fully represent us, and we have the right to create our own narrative and to come and say, but how could you say that? And at that moment I said, you say there is no collaborative processes, and there is, Aurovilians do not welcome external experts, and multidisciplinary experts cannot conclude something together. But I mean, I came later than them to Auroville, much later, but from all the history I have been trying to collect, it happened before. All of this happened before. But we have to understand that anytime there is a collaborative process, that it doesn't lead to anything because obstruction or something happens, people get down. They feel like, why would we do it again? So this time we really wanted to make it so clear, so no one again come and say, Aurovilians cannot work together. Like, that was really the main intention, to make this kind of a statement. And I was asking them, did this happen before in Auroville? And they said, yes, all of this happened before in Auroville, but this is much bigger scale. Like, this time it was all of this number of architects, all of this number of experts, and the communication between them, and how it was developing through time, and towards the end it was really, really efficient, and so towards the end it was much easier. It happened in a bigger scale this time, and that it is, I think, what we feel like that was successful. This narrative, at least between us, we feel we are more confident. We feel, can we do it? Yeah, we can. Can we collaborate across different disciplines? Yes. Can we work with experts outside Auroville? I don't think the Vastushilpa have given us comments that they were so astonished by the welcoming and all the information that was given and all the ideas that was given. And it is extremely touching to me that most of those who has worked really were giving without receiving anything materially, as Dipti was saying. But now, does this change in narrative is leading to something? We have no idea. I mean, we are looking and we are waiting, and I know my talk now is streaming, and I know we are seen, and I know Dr. Ravi is listening, but the question to me, when we show this kind of a process, and we show this capacity, what kind of atmosphere is needed to have more processes like this? So is there a hope? Yeah, we have to hope. Our job as professionals, always to communicate what we feel, the high standards of professionalism, the atmosphere needed for the processes, and it stops here. Because there is always the professionals who has to continue communicating, and there are different institutions to make decisions, and in Orville it's very complex. There is an assembly, the different working groups, and the governing board. And so this is one point, is that we tried, and we will keep trying, and we'll keep trying to communicate. And we hope the atmosphere, and this is responsibility also of the working groups, is that we hope that this would take us to a place in which let's open for an atmosphere that supports these kind of processes. Next. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm so focused on the... Yeah. The puzzle. I always feel that any work can be achieved when there is awareness. There is a sense, I am good at this, you're good at that, you're good at that. And I feel this was achieved. There was amazing sense of fraternity, amazing sense of you are better at this aspect, you are better in this aspect, and let's distribute the work. And this is what really felt. At the end, it was completely creative chaos. We were laughing about it. We have no idea what's happening. We have no idea who's going to finish the exhibition, these presentations, the report, but it was happening somehow through this complete mess, because everyone was focused on something that they can do. And I think this was really one of the successes. Next. And then the shelves. And this is, if you have seen the 3 days conference, we always felt that plenty of research has done before in Orville. And it's so touching when we got all of this work together in 3 days. It was so astonishing to us, all of this work has done, and all contribution. And I do not honestly know any kind of society in which you see this happening. Decades and decades of continuous work to provide research. And you see how multidisciplinary it, from planning to water to energy to all the fields. And part of this was to get this all together, and now we have one Google Doc including all the data, one YouTube channel including all the presentations, all compacted in 3 days, all given to the consultants to do the DDP. And we feel this is not only some kind of a success, for us this is a tribute. Like, we felt it's almost a thank you note for all the experts who have been working for decades on this. And then all of this, to me, concludes into one simple hope. With all of this data collected, with all of this work, and this is my last hope here, is that we shift from this conflict-based narrative, because I'm a designer, I cannot see things in any different way. For us, it's always, there's function and there's form. You do form, function is not working, you do function, form is not working and is not so beautiful, and then you do both, and then suddenly there's no good structure, and it's so complex how to get all together, how to integrate. Design is by default is a profession to integrate. And I wonder, when are we going to leave from this conflict narrative to enjoy? There is an ecosystem, there's social conditions, there's topography, there is a vision. Why don't we just enjoy making them work together? And this is my last hope, is that we all shift, and there is a recognition, a total recognition, that we shift from this to that different place in which let's enjoy, integrate, right? Yeah? Thank you.
It's a hard act to follow.
Shall I do?
No, I can do that. So, I think I'm as tired as everybody else in the room, and I've got my COVID brain still. So, is that okay? You can hear me? Yeah. Yes? No? I don't know that that's going to make a big difference. Is that better? Ah, that is better. Okay. So I'm going to keep it short and succinct because we're getting on late. So I'm going to be a little bit cheeky. What on earth does a Big Mac have to do with planning in Oroville? Well, we had it as challenges. And when we were discussing it the other day as to what slides to use and how to bring across these ideas, Omar said it's kind of a bit like fast food. Fast food is quick, easy, you think it's filling, it's actually not very healthy for you. It's not going to be very good on the long run if you keep eating all this fast food. And somewhere in all of this, these oversimplified solutions that we kind of push for because we want to see something happening tomorrow are actually the planning version of fast food. What we actually need are longer term processes with community involvement. And the example that came to my mind, in the Middle Ages in Europe, and probably around the same time here in India with the temples, we were building cathedrals, and we were spending hundreds of years of dedication building these cathedrals. And people who started the foundations knew when they started that they would never see the finish of this building. Even their grandchildren may not see the finishing of this building. And in a way, I'm not suggesting we have to take hundreds and hundreds of years, but for the 21st century, Oroville is kind of like a cathedral. We're building the modern version of this. It's a living place. And it's about building a cathedral and not building a warehouse. That's a bit radical, but there we go. And the next thing about challenges is fear. Fear often inhibits us. Fear, do we dare to reach out to our neighbor? Do we dare to reach out to other experts, come together, collaborate, and so forth? But there's also the fear somewhere, and I understand this very well. The people who've lived here the longest, the people who were here at the beginning, a lot of the people who worked with Roger, there's the fear that this vision will be lost. And I fully understand that, I get it. But the danger in this is that if we don't reach out to look for help, to build the vision, we lose the very thing that we're afraid of losing. And the oversimplified, if we go for the oversimplified parameters of the Big Mac, it's kind of, you think it's going to be easy to find people to collaborate with. It's like this kind of lowest common denominator. If we boil everything down to a really simple set of definitions, that should be really easy to get people to come together to build. However, today, in the world we have today, with so much complexity, with all the issues of climate change and everything else, we can't use oversimplified solutions anymore. We need to use and develop complex solutions for the complex problems, which from my own personal view is actually one of the main reasons for us to be here. It's part of the spiritual path to actually come together to do that. And last but not least, of course, collaboration. The wide variety of people, Oroville as an international community, Oroville with all this amazing expertise and amazing capacities that we have. It can only lead, as we've seen from the report that Suryamai and Helen went through, to richer and inclusive results. But I want to emphasize again some of the things that they mentioned. We need time. These types of processes need time. You can't do it tomorrow. And in this particular case, you can't even do it in 2 months. It needs time to mature. And it needs trust. If you lose the trust of the people that you want to reach out to help, there is no collaborative process. So the building of trust is one of the most important things we're doing. I mean, not just we, but we, all of us, in building Oroville. We will not manage it without this trust. And last but not least, I have to say, funding. Everybody that worked on this, everybody that helped, it was all in our free time. It's not our jobs. And everybody was doing all their other jobs at the same time. And if we genuinely want this to work, we have to find a way to integrate these processes and other new processes that we haven't even discovered yet into how we work, and we need to support them financially. And I talked at the very, very beginning about the fact that we'd planted a seed back in the Unity Pavilion and that it's grown into a tree. So I just want to re-emphasize the fact with the fast food that you can't rush seeds. I see we have quite a few green belters sitting in here and think they might support me in that. You plant the seed, you nurture the seed, you help the seed to grow into a sapling and into a tree. But it comes up more or less at its own speed. If you water it too much even, it doesn't become too healthy. It has to be at the right speed. And I think I will probably end there. Yes.
Okay, so now everybody's saying, how are we going to go forward? So this is the big question now. How are we going to implement what we have done? And for that, we realize that we need some conditions to go forward. So we have put together a few. This is how our road has been. A lot of impediments, a lot of problems, which we have solved on the way with some grace, with some help, with some collective thinking, with some miracles. But we have managed till now, but it hasn't been always an easy path, because like David was saying, creating trust is a very difficult thing. And we have had our problems with our planning group because, we don't have, like somebody said, we don't have a mandate as such. We just jumped into the unknown, and we asked all the architects who are also coming with us. We can't guarantee anything. We don't know where we are going. But if you're ready to jump with us, you can. And we did manage quite well. But in the end, we're still left with this kind of inkling or no clarity as yet, as of today, that what we have done will be appreciated by our planning group, by ATDC, whether they're going to take this, this report that we are making, that we have shown you, how far they're going to take it, seriously, how far they're going to implement it, what are the kind of experts that they are going to be working with, whether from within or from outside Oroville. So these are questions that are still a bit difficult for us to navigate. And we are trying that with the present, we have hope. Perhaps in a couple of days, we'll know a little bit more. That this condition that we had put forward, that our whatever report we create will be sent to the Vastushilp Foundation, to the consultants, and it will not be abridged, it will not be edited. And then, of course, they can put a note to it if they don't agree to some of it. ATDC has the right, but we don't know whether they're going to really do it. So that's one of the things. But the main thing is also, we know, all of us who have been in any kind of planning process in Oroville, or any group for that matter, we know that after a while, it becomes very difficult because, either you make a lot of enemies, or you have a lot of, firefighting to do. So our system is actually not designed for these kind of processes. We need a process that allows envisioning as separate from that which admins and as separate from that which implements. And I know this is not a new idea in Oroville. That's the thing, we have always have ideas, but how much of it and where are we in that circle of reinventing something? So can we, do something which allows this to happen, that, L'avenir d'Oroville can actually be the future of Oroville, that does the envisioning, that allows all this participation to happen, to take forward everything, and helps us in the path rather than, creating impediments. So this is a very difficult topic, but we are still hopeful that if everything goes right, and if Vastushilp is on board, and the secretary is also, supporting the fact that what we have agreed upon, and that the ATDC is going to do what it has said, then we are still hopeful that some of these ideas will be taken forward, that there will be next steps to this, and we'll manage go forward. But this is one of our problems, in Auroville in general. And this was also our fear when we started, that again, this should not enter a drawer. One more report in the thousands of beautiful reports that we make, but really it should go forward. And we hope that it is the right moment. So whenever we try to do this, we need to do it with a multidisciplinary team, which we have in Auroville. We have the expertise. But what we lack is sometimes creating a safe space. We have to, like it's already been said, trust, fear has already been mentioned, and we have to create a safe space where this can happen. So a kind of creating an atmosphere that allows us to do collaborative planning. And I feel with this little exercise of dream weaving, we have shown that it is possible. And the amount of positivity and gratitude and comments, that we have received, it shows that the community wants this. But the problem is, how do we manage it? Maybe we have made a little step, and maybe this gives the community a little bit more strength to say that this is possible. And the last point, this you might be surprised, this is a giraffe. So, so the giraffe, I don't know if somebody knows, but this has actually, it has the largest heart in a land animal. And it has the most compassionate heart. And I feel that a lot of this is necessary if we want to go forward. We have to learn to forgive each other. We have to learn to forget, learn the lessons, but we have to learn to forgive each other because we're a very small community, and we tend to always, put people in boxes, and then we are not able to go forward. So we have to open those doors again. We have to be compassionate towards each other, and then, there can be a way forward, which is really a collaborative process, not only in planning, but maybe in other fields in Auroville. Thank you.
So that concludes the presentation. We will open up for questions and answers now. And for that, I invite the Dreamweaving and Citizens Assembly teams to go get a chair and come up on stage. Just so everyone's aware of the time, it is about 6:45. But we're still willing to be here and answer any questions for as long as it takes. And before everyone leaves, we have a small announcement from Kathy.
So while we're setting up, I just wanted to give a very brief overview on the financials as well, because this process was fully funded by donations, and a lot of the donors are sitting in this room, so a very big thank you to all of you who gave generously to enable this to happen. When we started, we didn't have a very clear overview of how much it would cost to pull this process off. So we do have that now, and just wanted to let you know that the overall budget to complete this process, which includes things like feeding everybody for all the different stages of the process, venue rental, filming costs, stationery and printing, transport, exhibition costs, the exhibition that you're seeing here, model, which you can also see outside, the report and printing and design for the report, as well as data storage for all the resources that were created. It's actually come to about 5 lakh. And we've been able to raise 4.3 lakh from donations within Auroville largely, as well as some from AVI, USA and UK, which I think is amazing. Like, it was such a spontaneous outpouring of support for this process. But if you're able to do the math, you'll realise that we're still a bit short. So I just wanted to mention that today. I'll put something also on the AVNet and in the news and notes that if anybody could dig deeper, it would be great. We need probably about another 60,000 to cover the expenses that are still pending. So thank you. That was the announcement.
Thank you, Kathy. So for anyone who has questions, please come here in the front row and just, yeah, sit in line. I think Helen will direct you. And we have the team who are just all crowded around here. Maybe you can all just move a little over onto the main stage. So we have a question here. Do you like to come up? Wait. So maybe this one? Or
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I've learned a lot of lessons. Especially you have shown how a collaborative work can be done here, and is a model for Auroville. And I hope that we can continue and show the foundation that another way of working is also possible. Thank you very much. But I have one question regarding integration of outreach area that has not been considered, because many schools and businesses going outside. So how you are going to integrate and take part in that? You see, especially economic part. When you look at the business, Kurupalayam is the business area of Auroville. We are doing in education, we are going to start vocational college in Vrindavan. How you are going to integrate it, how you want to put it together. That is my question regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you. And also to say that if any of the architects feel like they want to respond to a question, please join us on stage. Who would like to respond to that?
Can I ask you, when you say outreach? Yeah, you mean by this the villages around Auroville, by region? Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a great question, because the truth is that while we have been working on the Crown, there is a unanimous agreement between planners that the real challenge for Auroville is the boundary condition. And this is very interesting, because boundary condition in settlements, meaning how you connect to the area around you. What is very special about a city like Auroville, a place that it is really trying to achieve these ideals, is that it needs two things to happen simultaneously. It cannot fully dissolve in its surroundings, because it actually is based on a very soft conception. All of these idealists, instead of fighting their governments or fighting in their areas, they come and try to create a new model. So it's very soft and peaceful phenomenon, but at the same time, so it needs to separate, right? Because otherwise, how you create a different model, but at the same time, how to fulfill the ideals if you are not so connecting. And you can only imagine some kind of a zone of connectivity, of exchange, in which you maintain some sense of entity, but at the same time you are in full exchange with the surroundings. Why this was not the challenge? That was not the challenge. The challenge was dreamweaving the crown. But it's correct. Even while we work on the crown, someone like Fabian said, but I cannot do it without seeing how we are going to get to the crown. But this was the task at the moment, because there is this, now is the crown. But in reality, there is an almost agreement between urban planners in which you need to deal with the boundary conditions. If we started the boundary conditions, we could not have done it. It is so complex, and it needs studying 5 kilometer, 15 kilometer around Auroville. And we believe that maybe this is going to start through the DDP process, and let's see how all the researches that was done could support this, and how can we support this, but that was not the task. But you're right, this is actually the most complex and the most needed to resolve.
And just to add to that, you'll have seen in many of the responses that we were running through from the evaluation report that quite often what resonated and the ideas that came across was this need to have sensitivity to the context, to the bioregion, and also looking at how we could also integrate that in terms of the social spaces as well for more connection. So it was definitely something that was considered and many felt was important.
All right, I believe we have a mic down there for questions. Shali, would you like to?
Hi, can you hear me? So first of all, I'll add my thanks and gratitude to everybody who participated. I think this is a great example of what Orville can do when we really put our minds to it and decide we want to do something like this. My questions are, first of all, has Vastu Shilpa Consultants actually agreed to do the DDP now? Is that confirmed? That's one question, and where exactly does that process stand? And my next question is kind of a straightforward one. I'm just curious how many people participated totally? Because, I mean, I know it's a big group of architects, a big group of organizers, community participants, but I haven't heard any kind of total number, and I think that would be really interesting to know. Thank you.
So I can probably respond on numbers. We know this because we had to work a lot with COVID restrictions on how many people we could have in the room, having to set up chairs around the outside of Bhumika so people could also participate. And I think it was around, and Praveen knows from organizing the food. Yeah, it was normally at most of the Dreamweaving sessions, there were around 70 people. Thanks, Sophie. And there were a few more. It sort of varied a little bit. Some people were available for some sessions and others, but yeah, it was around the sort of 20 architects, around 20 technical experts, around 20, I think there were up to 40 people involved in some way in the focus group, and then there were around 12 to 13, or it started out at 13, then went down to 6 in the randomly selected, and then all of, obviously, the team around that as well. So I'll hand over to Omar for the other question. Or who wants to, yeah, Vastu Shilpa, where is the, okay, to Mona.
So, yeah, Shari, we are also eagerly waiting the final, but what we have heard from Rajiv is that it has been signed from their side, the contract, and now also from Delhi, it has come back with the green light. So we believe it is with the secretary at the moment. And it looks positive.
Are there any more questions for the team or for the architects? Yes, please come down.
I don't have a question, but I would like actually to express my gratitude for all the work which has been done. I've been following actually the sessions online on Sundays because I cannot come during the week. I had tears in my eyes when I was looking at what was happening in the whole context of, let's say, the critical crisis we have been in. And I would like to make one observation. Omar has been talking a lot about changing narratives. I would love to see one narrative changing, and it's that the community is against the development of the city. I hope that you are proving and that the community supporting you is a clear sign that the community at large is not against the development of the city.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to share something or has a question?
Hello? Yeah. My name is Gundolf. I appreciated the sessions also at home on my computer. And my concern is there a soft border or a hard border between social activities within Auroville and without? Because in case it is, we have our internal financial system that only allows Aurovilians and guests to participate. Within this condition, I feel that to have a vivid space or plaza, it needs to be condensed. It means if it's spread out, there won't be a living, active happening. So when we, as long as we have a hard border, and that means to have it vivid, we need not to spread out the activities all along the crown, but in the phasing, we need to start with main focus. Is this, this can be realized within the presentation?
Thank you for the question. That actually highlights one of the aspects that we didn't mention, because there's so many aspects we could have, and otherwise we'd be here till midnight. In the initial presentations and discussions to Vastu Shilpa Foundation consultants, we were presenting Crownways as an example, and of course Crownways had run originally from Kailash through to Joy Guesthouse, and it was a fairly condensed area, which of course you worked on as well. And that was what I was imagining. Like when they were there when we met them in the foundation office, I was we didn't even know if it was going to happen. We didn't know how many people would be involved, anything. But we were imagining something of a similar scale, which would kind of go in the direction of what you're suggesting, possibly in another area. It might not have been the same area. But actually, Vastu Shilpa were very much encouraging us to take on the whole crown, which, of course, from their point of view, if you've got the DDP that you have to do as a task, they were hoping, and I think that hope was borne out, that if enough people take part and if the ideas come for the whole crown, that really helps them to get a sense of the different flavors of the crown. So I think the confusion is coming that the work that's been done has really been that poetry that we were talking about in the Unity Pavilion. And now with the DDP, if that goes ahead and they work on that, I'm presuming that more or less what you've just described is what will probably be determined in the DDP. They will pick either an area, maybe quite likely around the solar kitchen, or potentially one area in each zone to give a focus. So don't get misled by the fact that people have been working on the whole crown. It won't all start being built at the same time. And the DDP, part of the DDP is to determine prioritization for certain areas. Okay?
Any more questions or remarks? Thank you. Okay, then I think we can close. So maybe we can, there's one more, sorry.
Yeah, hi. Just a question on the Crown Road. Normally when you design a road, as I understanding, you start with a need for mobility, an amount of traffic that you need to find a solution for, and then from that need you create a road. In this case, you have a small need, though it is there for people to go to work, from home to work, to Solar Kitchen, back and forth. But you don't necessarily have the full need already of the entire town. So you're sort of working backwards, creating a road for a need that's not yet there. So how do you figure it out? How do you simulate it, that sort of need that's going to be there when the town is supposedly 50,000 people and all the infrastructure is there? How does that integrate with the Crown Road? Thank you.
Who would like to respond?
I wish I can confidently give you an answer for this very tough question, but see, sometimes it is so clear, and there is specific studies leading to specific result, and you do a straight to achieve a specific aim based on very accurate studies. And sometimes you are trying to create a new situation. Like you feel like, can we create the situation? But you are also building a hypothesis that also through a study, what if we create this, what it would lead to, and then what it would lead to. And it's almost like closing your eye. There's a sense of intuition to it. And it exists in planning. Sometimes it is so clear and methodological, and sometimes there is some intuition is needed. In this specific scenario, I have no idea. In this specific scenario, I have no idea. But in general, in planning, this exists, that you work without having the full data, set of data. But you should have some data, and you have to build a hypothesis. But while you are doing this, when you are not clear, you have to do it experimentally. So you do something, and then you see how people react to it. We know that in planning you can make a street, but you cannot easily imagine how people would, if the people were going to use this street or that street. It's almost impossible. Like imagining human behavior is almost impossible. And and then you do something and test it. And you do something and test, and then you see where to go from there. This is the best I can say about this. Yeah.
Very quickly, if I put my cheeky hat on again, we had one of the leading mobility experts from Europe, Karl-Heinz Posch from Austria. He came here around the time of the Dreamweaving and around the time of Crownways, and he even was invited back by L'Avenir a year or two later to give a workshop on mobility in Oroville. And at the end of that, one of the most important points he made at the top of his list of recommendations was only build roads if you're absolutely sure you need them. And I'll leave it there.
Anything to follow that? Yeah.
I did participate with this workshop, and what was most important is that Karl-Heinz Posch, he mentioned we have the chance to do a city in Oroville size just to manage with mainly pedestrian and cycles. And when we see now with the climate change, in many cities around the world, started already with car-free cities. So if this recommendation from Karl-Heinz Posch goes also to Shilpam Foundation, that the possibility to invest instead of vehicle traffic, to put more money for cycling and pedestrians, and if they need a shadow or they plant trees, that they have shortcuts. And I know shortcuts, when you have to move, it invites cyclists, and then we have a new kind of city for the future.
Does it? Just to say, when if you look further down when you read the report, I think the fourth thing on the sort of experience of Oroville was around trying to create joy and ease of movement through having little shortcuts for people to walk and cycle. So that's very much been captured and will be passed across as well.
Thank you for your work. Now, one thing I feel it's important for all of us to remember is that in terms of infrastructure, everything, we have to remember impermanence. Today, technically, we can remove any infrastructure. You see, if we make a mistake when we develop an infrastructure, in the future, it might even be better. But technically, you can remove a bridge, you can remove a road, you can remove anything because it's not at the right place. So, of course, what we want to do is to put it now at the right place. Okay, we make choices, but let's not panic, because in the future, if our grandchildren need to remove that thing, they will do it. It's not a problem. Okay, so let's take it easy.
I fully agree in general. One of the things that I really loved when Doshi, one of the first talks I heard from Doshi back in 2000, I think it was, we met in Sochu, and he said at that time, listen, if everything you've built to date, except for the Matramandir, is wrong, and you have to knock it all down and start again, it's only, at that time, it was only 3% of the whole of Oroville. And now we're maybe at 6% of the whole of Oroville. It seems like a lot when we look around, but 6% isn't the end of the world. But what I would like to say to that is, yes, you're right, but I think the concern, I'm kind of speaking for everybody here, but maybe wrongly, the concern is when you lay out the cross-section of the crown, the amount of area that's been dedicated to infrastructure and services today is significantly larger than what it would necessarily have to be if you went for more of a system where you collect the pipes together in a way which can then be changed more easily in the future. So if you make these chambers running in the ground, you can put the infrastructure, and if you need to upgrade in 10, 20, 50 years' time, you take it out, you put the new one in. One of the issues that for me is a bit of a pet topic is because we don't own the land, there's somewhere we don't value the land. We value it in different ways, but if you look from a planning point of view, I'll give my favorite example. If you go to Verite and you see the Oceanic. The interesting thing with Oro Oceanic, you see the result of the capitalist system in an Oroville context. They've literally taken the boundaries of the plot, they've paid however much money they needed to for the plot, they've maximized the building area and the height that they could, and they want to make the most money out of it. So that's the classic capitalist approach. What we're doing in Oroville is almost the opposite. We've got this land. Some Orovillians were amazingly generous at different times over the past and bought land themselves, or it was bought by people from outside on behalf of Oroville. But our planning does not respond to the truer, deeper value of the land. We're not trying to maximize its deeper value. And so if we use too much area of this infrastructure, like the value per square meter of an extra meter width over 4.4 kilometers, we actually calculated it. If we went down from the width that it is today to a smaller width for a chamber that can run the pipes in it, I think Alan, we said 2 crores, was it? I think it was 2 crores that you save. That's the value of the land that can be used for something else. And it's told that the chambers are too expensive. Well, if we're saving 2 crores, if somebody would be doing that in a city, that 2 crores would be being taken into account. But we're just spreading out as much as we like. And if we use the width today, Tom, you're right that we can change it in the future, but the problem is the DDP, if it specifies that, the buildings in the future will be set. So you'll still get that width, which won't have the specific, it won't have, you're still using an awful lot of area for infrastructure. Yeah?
I made a mistake because I used infrastructure in the sense of all what is built on the land, not only on the pipes and cables
Okay.
and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure, we can change anything at any time, and buildings only have a life of 60 to 100 years anyway, but yes.
Yeah, particularly with the materials that we use.
Sure.
Concrete is not eternal. Huh?
Correct.
Just to also emphasize a bit on the response that we got from the community and the participants in the process, all these, in a way, I see that the questions that are being raised that have been responded to by the community and by the participants in that process. So it's just assuring that the main ideas that have come forth about interaction with the bioregion that was already clearly expressed in the responses, this necessity for prioritizing pedestrians and cyclists in the on the crown was also mentioned very strongly, and also this need for light structures that can be experimented with, which are also sort of temporary and impermanent, was also expressed. So just to assure you that this has been expressed very clearly in the report, and this will go to the Vastushilpa consultants, and we just hope that they will take this into consideration. So.
Yeah, Tom, to just continue with this thought is that I want to mention major understanding of the cities of the future today. And I would refer to a talk by a theory basically produced by one of the major architects and planners today, Rim Koolhaas, in which he envisions that the city of the future is the city of flexible infrastructure. It is very simple systems that can shape and reshape. And see, imagine that we are working on the city of the future, but we are missing that. And we know because the speed of the infrastructure development today is unbelievable, and the speed of mobility change, the mobility system change, is also unbelievable. And then from our discussions with major infrastructure engineers, we discover that they are working on flexible infrastructure systems in which it takes less space and at the same time can be easily modified every few years because it is expected. It is expected, and we're just trying to push for this. Because our understanding of the situation is that if we don't, there will be some struggle. Like, yes, you can do it cheaply today, just bury on the ground, but then when you come to maintain, or you come to change the whole system after 3, 4, 5 years, again, and then you end up, if you invest in one of these more advanced systems that has been proven to work, they have problems and then they have solutions for these problems, then you avoid this whole paying again and again and again, and you know you are going to change the system. You know for sure. And this is when we feel like a good push for an advanced, flexible infrastructure is what is needed for a city that it is aiming to be a model for the future. That's it. At least we can use what exists today, like not the least developed, one of them more developed is still doable, yeah.
Yeah, Tom, so I don't think it's about what we do in Oroville, I think it's about how we do in Oroville. So that determines everything. I feel that is more important than, finding correct solution and all. So if everybody's behind us, that's what counts for us. I mean, how we do it, with what motivation, energy, collaboration behind us, then it makes sense. Then we have all possibilities before us. bureaucratic hub.
If we would use that tool, then you can make as many projects you want on urban research and get them funded. That's why we suggested this thing 25 years ago. Make this center for urban research. The same way we have the CSR, Center for Scientific Research, and they channel quite a lot of funds through research projects. So that could be also an opportunity.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, if I understood correctly, the money for Centre for Urban Research came from the European Union grant. And I might be horribly naive, but what I've been saying since years is that if Oroville would come together and do what we actually came here to do, we would have more money than we know what to do with.
Yes, so you're always welcome to take the discussion further outside this forum. Is there any other question, any other remark that needs to be made? Okay, I sense not. So I think we can close. Maybe everyone can give everyone in the room a big hand of applause. It was a long session. And yeah, a big thank you to everyone. This was really a lot of work, and yeah, we will see what the next steps are. All right, good night, everyone.